We have the infamous. Oh, what's up? Don't get off. Get on.
Okay, you're back on. Good. Hey, welcome, Robert. How are you?
Welcome. Awesome. How are you?
Excellent. So this morning, and I don't know if there are people on this blog that have been following it, this blab. I keep calling it a blog. It's a blab. I don't like the word blab because I don't feel like I'm blabbing. But to share with you, for you that are joining us for the first time, my name is Craig Collins, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Yes, You Can Read Now. And we've developed a reading method called the Universal Reading Method. It was a project that my brother worked on. He had an epiphany, and this reading method dropped in his lap. Just came down from one word that was concepts. He learned the word concepts from a legal professor, and then the next morning he sat down and wrote down this reading method, which is quite amazing. I mean, the process. He had been a non-reader since he was a little kid, and he was really challenged with reading, and he was in law school, and so he was thinking of quitting law school because he was having so much difficulty with memorizing all the concepts and the words, and the vocabulary was just overwhelming to him. And so the law professor told him that think about it in concepts, that we don't memorize all those words, and that we put them into concepts, and then we memorize the concepts. So the next day he woke up and he wrote down the reading method. It was 7 concepts, and that was an accident. It ends up being extremely important and significant to why people are learning to read in 2.5 hours with us, is because they're learning just 7 concepts. And if you're there and you think about that, and as you're listening to us, you think about 7 concepts, you think about the phone numbers. If someone gives you their phone number and they say 858-945-5007, which is my phone number, you can write it down, or you want me to repeat it and you want to write it down. But if I say my phone number is 945-5007 without the 3 digits in the beginning, the 10, make it 7, you can type it right away on your phone and you can remember it. So that's just kind of a simple example, and it's true for most people that happens. And other people, sometimes people can remember the 10, but it's difficult, and it's more takes more focus. So today I want to talk about is young children that I've taught, and the experience that these young children have when I teach them, and what happens after they've learned to read. Young children are 7 years old, 6 years old, 9 years old. They have, even the teenagers, the 16-year-olds. There's a certain purity about them, and even though they have been called names already, and they all already feel like they're behind something or someone, or less than somebody, which is a big deal for children. When I teach them, the surprises that take place are amazing to me. Absolutely amazing. Next week, we're going to have on Maria Novella and her daughter, Marissa. So I'll give you a little preview of Marissa. I think Marissa someday, especially with being an election year, looking at elections, I think that Marissa someday will run for president and win. She's a superstar. But it's like coming to this fork in the road for anyone. Okay, you come to a fork in the road, and are you going to take this fork? Or are you going to take that fork? And at 8 years old, there's some forks. Unbelievable, but there are forks. And then decide if you're going to go with the in crowd, and the cool, groovy, far out people, or are you going to go with the people who are studying and learning and want to go to college and have future and have a presence of themselves as making a difference in the world. And 8-year-olds have that experience. So Maria's daughter, Marissa, was a little girl and 8 years old, and she had a terrible time in first grade. She really didn't like first grade. And it was because she couldn't read. It wasn't because she didn't like books. It wasn't because of her attitude. It was that of her surprise, absolute surprise, of how hard it was for her to take sounds and letters and make words and to understand what was being written. And she would just look at these books thinking, this is going to be easy. I'm on for the show. You know, I'm ready to go. And so, didn't happen. And she was really disappointed. So in the summer between her first and second grade, her mom, who has a school where we are teaching our universal reading method in Las Vegas, Nevada, she came. She and I were talking, and her daughter was overhearing our conversations on the phone because it was summertime, so she was at the office fairly often. And she just announced one morning, "Mom, I want to learn that reading method you and Craig are talking about. I want to do it. I know you've got it on a video. I know you've got it here in the office." She said, I want to do this. I really want to do it. So on her own, she said, so her mom called me and said, Marissa is, she's just 8 and she's real challenged with reading and words. And do you think we should let her do this reading method? She's pretty young. I said, no, I think it would be a great idea, especially since she wants to do it. That's a big part. That's a huge part. So poof. She went on a reading method and she came out of it, and she read a book that afternoon, because she still sat in her mom's office and nothing to do. So she just sat down and read her whole book. I mean, like beginning to the end. And before it was like, a couple sentences and maybe a paragraph would have worn her out, and she would have walked away kind of, disappointed. But this time she read the whole book, and that continued. So now what is Marissa doing? Well, Marissa, she ran for student council, and now she's a student council member, and it took a certain grade level and a certain, teacher had to reinforce that she do this. And even a judge gave her a big bouquet of flowers, and she's like a champion. And then her mom took her shopping, and she was buying the regular things that kids get for class and school. And her mom goes, and Marissa says, "Oh, well, Mom, no, I need a special purse, that kind of a name brand purse. And I like to wear dresses. I think dresses would be more appropriate for a student council person, and she takes her whole life so much seriously and so excited. And in fact, we were trying to have her come on today, but it's, Valentine's week, and she's got a lot of obligations, and there's a student council meeting she's got to go to. And, her dance card was too full. So we're going to see her next Friday. She's even going to get a day off with Mom. So it's going to be, Mom and Daughter Day. And on top of it, we'll get to hear from her. So that's going to be exciting. So one of the first people that I ever taught, first little boys I taught, was up in Manhattan Beach, California. And, I really want you to hear these experiences with children. I mean, and it's not limited to children, it's adults and it's older people, and it's everyone who's been challenged with reading. And you can imagine, as I tell these stories, that start with the young ones, but just imagine if you're out there and you have challenges with reading, excuse me, if what that might be like, for you. And I want you to know that I'm not forgetting about you, but today I'm focusing on the children. So I drive up to Manhattan Beach, and I want to film this, and I don't know anything about cameras. And I've got a tripod, and I've got a camera, and somebody's told me how to do this. And then I got a little boy, and then I'm teaching the reading method myself. Okay, this is one of the first students I taught myself. So it's important that I know the reading method. If I'm going to teach the reading method, I've got to know the reading method, and I know it, and I've got, I'm using some helpers, that the student looks at that I can review. So it helps me, of course, to follow along and teach the reading method. But there are many parts of the reading method of little innuendo things that are now included in our video that makes it incredibly more fantastic to be on the online reading method, by the way. Absolutely incredible. No mistakes. I don't make any mistakes, and I include everything because we were able to edit and push and position and place it and get the right lighting and all that kind of thing. So it's complete. But anyway, this time I'm teaching a little boy, and I'm just, I'm really, really exploring the possibility of how to do this, and then working with him and looking at him. And so I begin, and I teach him the reading method, and it's really clear. Now, this little boy was the superstar in math for his class, and got awards for being a math genius, and really math was really his hot topic, and he was an athlete, and he's a real cool little kid. But when it came to the time when they started doing those word problems, he couldn't do the word problems, and he was absolutely uncomfortable. That was not okay with him. He liked being the math whiz, and the scientist in the class. He loved that people saw him that way, and he liked doing the work. And here he was in word problems, and they didn't make sense, and he couldn't do the words. So that was really his incentive. So he really wanted to learn to read. And so when I came, I just told him about it. And our reading method is a formula. So being a math kind of guy, which a lot of dyslexic students are, they like math, they like formulas, they like answers. And so I gave him the formula for the reading method. I taught him the reading method. So he was just so cute. He read this book at the end. He was reading from a book. He read all the words, but he read from a book, and he was just so characteristic. I mean, he read the book, and it was like he was in the book. It was like he was an actor, and he really enjoyed, puffing it up, and he really enjoyed that he could do this and do it easily. And he went back to school, and his mom called me about a month later, and he won an award again. He was getting awards for the most improved student. The most improved student. He was up there with the rest of the kids, and his reading was perfect, and he was on to bigger and better things. And that was about probably 7 years ago. So he's now in high school, and he's doing just fantastic. And I think has definitely designs to go to college. And again, he was an athlete, and I'm sure that math is something that he still loves and enjoys as well. So it's two little kids, young 8-year-old, another 8-year-old, and what happens? What we are creating is opportunity when you teach someone to read, and the thought about teaching someone to read in 2.5 hours, and that's really is something to think about. I mean, to really to contemplate, like to be cynical about. And I want to share with you that your cynicism and my cynicism and my needing to really prove that what I would say and what I'm saying today is true, was that I traveled for 3.5 years, and I went to countries and over to the UK. I was up in Canada. I was in New York. I was in Minnesota. I was in Chicago. I was in Northern California. I was in Hawaii. And so, inside of me, what is that about? It's like I really felt a calling to teach the world to read. And at the same time, I felt a calling to be authentic, to have integrity in what I say, and realize that what I'm saying is was for me a challenging thing to receive. My brother told me he was teaching people to read in less than 2 hours, and he was. We've extended it a little bit because we want to be more thorough, but he was teaching people, and he told me, and my brother, all his life, the one thing about him was he never told a lie. In fact, God, when we were kids, I used to have to kick him under the table. My mom said, did you guys have a party at the house while we were gone on vacation? It's like, don't tell him yes, don't say that, please. Kicking him and going, oh no, because he would always tell the truth. And so I knew he was telling me the truth, but I didn't know exactly how that was going to pan out in regards to this reading method. And I thought, well, maybe he just thought that was true. And so I started off with believing is that he taught people to read, and he was a charismatic man. He was really good with kids, and he was a good teacher. So that's why they learned to read from him in such a short period of time, because of his personality, which was he was a good teacher, and he's good with kids. And so I decided I needed to find out, well, if he can do that, can I do that? And so I started teaching the reading method, and I wanted to change it a little bit and add a few things I thought were important, and it didn't work. I thought, it's not working with me. And then I went back to it, and he said, no, just teach it exactly the way I teach it. Don't add anything. Don't change it at all. I said, okay. So when I did, then each of the students that I taught within 2.5 hours, and you'll hear people report it with less than 2 hours, actually, sometimes an hour and 45 minutes, that I was personally teaching the person to read, and they became a reader right in front of my eyes. and I knew it was flowing through me, and my brother's reading method was flowing through me, and it was transforming them. I was watching, because I'm a psychology person. My background's in psychology, and so I really watch body language, and I was seeing eyes opening, and I was seeing people sitting up straighter. I was seeing people leaning forward, and I was seeing them open up with their hands and not having their hands tight in their hands, but opening them up. And I was seeing all these body language changes, and then I was hearing them read 475 multi-syllable words. And they were 7 years old, they're 8 years old, they're 16 years old. And I knew that no one else in their class could read those words other than they, because of us teaching them the universal reading method. And so, but I want you to know, for the diligence and for honoring your cynicism, I hope I've done the legwork for you. I hope you can accept that I have gone out there and I've taught people who were dyslexic. I taught people who were autistic. I taught a 94-year-old woman who had Alzheimer's syndrome. I've taught a lot of people, and I've searched for people, especially who were the most challenged, had the most difficulty, because I knew if I can teach the most challenged, then anyone else below that who are not as challenged are going to have an easy time of it. So it's been a really interesting journey for me, really interesting journey. And I invite you to join us on that journey. I invite you can travel around the world with the Universal Reading Method because you have it online. Yeah, and you have everything that I am. You have every single, and better than I was in the beginning. You have everything that I am. You can travel. You can go to countries. You can go to people. You can use your influence. And you can set up classes. You can set up people to be putting it online, and you can connect it. And I help monetize you for that. As you're going through that experience, for every student that you teach, I provide you $100, a minimum of $100. And that is really, really, to me, I mean, like, because of what it costs to live these days and to travel and whatever, is that, just to multiply that $100 times 10 students. And you can teach 10 students at one time in one room if you want to. You can actually go to the theater and ask them if they'll let you use the theater and fill the theater with students and charge everybody, they're charged $300, $297. And from that, you'll receive $100. But what you'll receive from it is when people say, well, how is your day? How is your day today? Well, how can you have a bad day when you've helped 10 or even one person's life change? Just one person, but you're going to be able to help hundreds of people's lives to change. And that's what I do. So how was my day? Fantastic. Excellent. Amazing. Yeah. That's what I'm doing. It's amazing feeling. It definitely flows through you. And you know that I just turned 66 years old on Sunday. And so as I'm reaching 66, I'm really excited about being 66. So with being 66, it's a time in my life when my life, I wanted to have meaning. I wanted to have important meaning, and I want to leave my mark on the world. And I want to see the results of my love and passion. And so I get to see that every day, and it's quite exciting. And through you, through our affiliates, as affiliates teach people, and they write me their notes or their testimonials, or give me a call and tell me what happened. It's really, really, really exciting to hear that. I didn't even do it. I wasn't even there. But I mean, right this minute, someone is learning to read English right this minute in England, or maybe just recently has just finished learning the reading method. And hopefully we'll have her on next week, and we can hear about her as well. It's just, and it's happening across the pond, and in another country. And then that person then is really interested in going forward in teaching other students to read in their area, and to setting up classes, and to putting it online. And they have all kinds of opportunities to reach the 25 million adults and children in the UK who are unable to read English. So it's exciting. 25 million. Yeah, 25. In the United States, 90 million. 90 million. Of course, we're much bigger, but 90 million adults in the United States are unable to read. And people would wonder, what group is it that we're talking about? 90 million adults, but isn't there a predominant group? There is a predominant group, but it isn't the one I think I would have guessed or you would guess. That group is women, and mostly in the South, women. So women's groups and women's organizations should definitely get behind us, because as we increase the ability for someone to read, of course, we increase their self-worth, their self-esteem, and the opportunity for them to participate in government, to vote. Many things pop up immediately when they are able to read, and the immediately is in 2.5 hours from when they start to want to learn and begin our universal reading method, our online universal reading method. Well, you're welcome. And one last thing to share with everyone is the University of California at San Diego Neuroscience Department has chosen our universal reading method and are going to be doing brain imaging and in the beginning phases of establishing this study. And so when educators have asked me, am I research oriented or am I research based or evidence based? Well, of course, with my travels around the world, evidence based, of course, I've got that one down. And now the research based. I don't think any other reading method has ever been research based by the University of California at San Diego Neuroscience and used brain imaging to find out what changes are taking place in the brain. I don't think they've even considered that when someone learns to read in a short period of time like we are, that the brain is changing. So it's just amazing. So I invite you all to join us and to become affiliates with us. There's an affiliate program on our website, and so you too can be involved in teaching students and receiving income from that. And I invite you to make a difference in your own life by participating in what we're doing. Thank you. I don't know about the legacy as a goal at all. But what I could feel was something really big was flowing through me, and I had an incredible attraction to it. I had a really big attraction to having it really explode. And then there was my brother, who had gone through a really tough time in his life when he couldn't read, and had a huge impact on him. And I really wanted him to be seen. I want my brother to be seen. I think that as we proceed, and once the research from UCSD comes through, that we'll see if possibly that he might qualify for a Nobel Peace Prize because that is the impact is so huge, and as we can prove that this impact is huge, and I think that I just like to see him be acknowledged for his greatness and the greatness that flowed through him and the dues he paid. Oh my God, I won't even go into detail, but he paid a lot of dues. I mean, he knows about the word dumb and stupid. He knows what it felt like to hear those words and to feel those words. And to one last thing is my brother thought that he was not Down syndrome, but that he was retarded. We use the word retarded. he thought he was retarded when he was a kid. And my brother's just really brilliant. He's an artist. He's a musician. He remembers all kinds of amazing stuff, and he knows all about science and math. And, just amazing guy. But for a long period of time, he thought he was retarded. And the reason he created the reading methods is so you out there who are challenged with reading won't go through what he did. And we've succeeded. He wanted the words to jump off the page, and if you look at our universal reading method, you'll see that we have sounds jumping off the page for you to experience. And so we've definitely been able to bring his dreams to reality, and we're continuing to. And we invite you to join us so that you can help us to reach the millions of people in the world that would like to learn. I can't tell you when I learned to read. I think it was around the 4th grade. And then, of course, my brother being challenged with reading, there was a little competition. And I remember sitting on the floor and reading a word because my mom kept going. It was the word train. And so I was able to read the word train. And I wasn't in school yet. It's not so much what I was able to do is I was able to memorize words. That was what I was able to do. I knew that there was a big payoff for doing that. So I started memorizing words when I was really young. So I was storing a lot of words. It was when I did the universal reading method that I realized that reading was not about memorizing words, and that my mind at 66 was getting kind of cluttered, and why was that? And I realized that, well, every word I know, which I am very verbal, was being stored in my brain. And so what I had an experience with is when I learned the universal reading method, I had a process where I realized that I was dumping all those words I memorized, but they were there available when I spoke them. I just immediately knew them. And so, and also there was a certain clarity that was taking place and an ability to articulate and to remember things that I was beginning to forget. And so it changed things quite radically for me. And I've shared it with other people who can read as well. And when I shared it with them, like a speed reading guy, I mean, that was amazing. I really, really enjoyed that. This guy was a speed reader, been a speed reader, read faster than President Kennedy. He just was a real avid reader and real focused, sophisticated kind of guy. And I effectively felt intimidated by him because he was such a businessman type guy, and he was so, intense, and he knew a lot of information. But his wife and he were talking about his expression of emotion and feeling and the way that he articulated, and he'd been a speed reader, so you can imagine that he would skip over a lot of stuff just to get the content out of, but not necessarily the emotion and feeling. So we taught him. I taught him and his wife sitting on a bench outside a library in Encinitas on a sunny day like we're having here in California today. It's what we call Santa Ana condition. So it's awfully real nice and warm. So we're sitting outside, and I taught him the reading method. And if you'll go on our website, at www.yesyoucanreadnow.com, you'll see. Or go on Facebook. We also have Facebook pages. Also, yesyoucanreadnow.com. You'll see a writing by Gary. I'm trying to remember his name. I've been thinking about, am I having brain farts still? Anyway, but Gary wrote this whole beautiful explanation of what took place with him and how he felt different the next day. I mean, profoundly different, and felt different, and thought differently, and expressed differently, and could feel words in his lips and his mouth and his heart. And he was touched. And so this is transformation that takes place in everyone. And each one, some people have their own unique experience, but nonetheless, everyone has an experience. And so, when Gary Nichols, that was it, got it, Gary Nichols. When Gary Nichols had the experience, and he wrote me this beautiful writing that went into detail. So please go find it, or Robert can share it with you. I've shared it with Robert, and so we can post it for you. But it's really, really, really powerful. And and then it's like each person that comes to me, they get these writings from them about things. And often it's later, like a month later or 2 months. I have one couple people that it was 4 years later, and I realized, my God, that was been 4 years ago, and then they're telling me about how many things they've accomplished in the last 4 years, and the fact that they are focused on accomplishing, that they're focused on their success of what they put their mind to, that they're curious, about life, and curious about what they're reading, curious about what they're learning, and wanting to apply it. And that's the key thing about people who are dyslexic. And this word dyslexic, I'm not real fond of the anything, but dyslexic, you've been dissed. I mean, that's what happens. You get dissed, and so it's like, not real comfortable with that word, because the people that I meet, those students who I really, really cherish and love and like, they come to me and they've been told they were dyslexic, stupid, and dumb. I mean, they kind of like, those words go together. Dope and dyslexic, they supposed to both start with D. And when within 2.5 hours, those words are gone. And I explained to them, and I'll tell you the truth. I said, I have a background in psychiatric social work, and worked on a locked unit in a mental hospital. I worked with developmentally disabled, with learning disabled kids in a 24-hour treatment facility. We've taught developmentally disabled adults with the reading method, and so I've worked with different populations. And if I was to do a study on the word brilliant, or the psychodynamic of brilliance, the first question I would ask a student is, have you ever had difficulty with reading? And if they said yes, they had difficulty with reading, I would include them in the study. I would definitely include them in the study, because I'm searching for brilliant people, and I find dyslexic people like Sir Richard Branson and Carl Schwab, Albert Einstein, a whole host of people who have been looked at and realized when they were growing up, or in their early time, that reading was a real challenge. And most of those people who are now successful then and read reading because they've learned to memorize words. But if I was to be able to choose a group of people that were brilliant, I would choose a group of people that first told me that they had trouble with reading, because that's the way their brain's really bright. And if you think about it, there's 444 little sayings, little rules you have to learn when you're being taught to read English in the schools and in different educational things. 444 rules. Well, you wouldn't be very brilliant or intelligent if you thought you really wanted to learn all those words, those rules. I mean, like, why would you want to, each time you come to a word, have to figure out which of the 44 rules applied to allow you to teach it? And that wouldn't be a formula. That would be a work project. So yeah, when they only have to apply, and when we're done, you only apply 4 of the concepts. You learn 7, but when you actually read, and I won't give away our secret. You got to go on the reading method and find it out. But there's only 4 concepts you have to know to be able to look at a word and read that word. To be able to apply, you have to know all 7, but you only have to apply 4 of them when you're reading a word. So it's why the brain takes. Yeah. And the 7 we use are usable immediately. It's not like they're optional. You use all of them to read, because you use them, but they're all within you, and then you apply intentionally 4 of them. So it's kind of amazing. Yeah, I just liked reading. I wasn't a very good student in high school, and my brother got grades because he spent all of his time studying. He didn't play; he just studied all the time and memorized everything. So he actually got invited to go to college, and he was accepted into college at the University of California at Santa Barbara. Which, when he got there, within the first semester, whatever, he was on probation, and then after 2 years, he quit. He quit the University of California at Santa Barbara because he just couldn't read. And he went to a counselor who was very helpful and instrumental. She said, "You're very smart, and you're not alone. There are many students. I'm the counselor, and I meet people all the time who come to me and say they can't remember all the words, they can't learn the words, they can't read, and so you're not alone. So what you want to do is you want to go learn how to read. And once you learn how to read, come back with the same energy you have, and you're going to do well at school." And he said, but look into the eyes of all the other people. You know, you think you're stupid and dumb, and they're smart. But look at them this time. Don't look at them from how you're feeling inside, but look at them. Just take in the information. Look at them, and see if you see brilliant people out there. And it was really an insight for him to realize that he wasn't alone, and that many people who were attending college were challenged with reading, and that he wasn't alone, and that what he needed to do was to find out how to read. And so he did. You know, it's amazing. Well, I think I shared with you earlier when he was in law school that a professor told him about concepts. But the process of being my brother was, an interesting process, because once he left the University of California at Santa Barbara, then because he had reached a certain place that my parents would like for him, and he was very embarrassed about having to leave Santa Barbara. And for a period of time, he worked at Summerhill School, which is in the San Fernando Valley, and he actually taught reading. And here he was, a non-reader, teaching reading. So he took the kids on field trips to the library, and he had them pick out books, and he had them read to him. And he did a lot of creative things with the students. And he talked to all the instructors and said, is there one reading method that I could use? And so they would refer him to a reading method, and he would look at the reading method, and then he would see all these exceptions. And there were so many exceptions that it was confusing, of course, to him. Still, it didn't teach him to read, to be able to read, to study the reading method, and he didn't feel it would help the students either. That they just didn't work. And each time anybody came out with a new idea, he would go and he'd seek it out. So he gathered in his brain a lot of information about reading, a lot of information, more so than he could possibly process. And at the same time, he was still challenged with reading. Now, remember, he went to after he went through community colleges for a couple of years and whatever, and then he went to Pepperdine University. So during Pepperdine University, he would say that he was reading because he was taking classes, he was getting grades. But in regards to our experience, is that no one really has learned to read until they learn to read with the universal reading method. And that's not an ego statement. No, that isn't just an overconfident statement. It's just a reality that people are able to memorize words, and that became the easiest thing to do. And then they combined it with some phonics and pronunciation and some speech pathology. And but it's still the brain. The brain isn't based on time. It's based on energy. So it spends a lot of energy to read when it has to process the words based on memory and memorizing. And then as you get older and whatever, you actually forget some of those things you memorized, and then you have to re-associate with that word, or you're working in a subject area, and then you start working with a certain technology, and it has its own vocabulary. So how nice not to have to do that. So when it downloaded for him in law school, even though he had attended college and he had done a great job and he'd actually gotten fairly good grades and he graduated, and would say that he was reading, obviously, and he felt he was joining in with the rest of the group. But was when he got into law school, he got, just knocked down and realized, gee, I can't do this. And then poof, it revealed itself to him in this epiphany. And then he was so good in law school. I mean, he graduated the top of his class, but he was so good that one of the teachers had stopped teaching and they needed to teach the class. So another professor was going to come and teach the class. And so my brother had learned from the other professor and taken really copious notes. And his notes were so good that he took in that class that they used his notes to refer to teach the class in the next semester. So, I mean, he was, again, getting, laurels, and that's the thing that happens when someone learns to read and hasn't learned. They just take off. They just like a rocket going to the moon. They're excited and they really never stop. And I think that's another question that people want to know, because especially if you're a teacher out there, or headmaster, principal of a school, you've had these reading methods come to, and people learn to read, and then they read for a while. And then it's kind of like I used to teach swimming, and I would teach swimming to these little babies and kids. But I had to be real careful, because when they show up the next year, they didn't know how to read. They forgot they didn't know how to swim. They forgot how to swim. So, and one time one jumped off the diving board believing they could swim, because they swam and jumped off the board last year. And then they got in the water. They were like, there was no memory for it. So this isn't true of our reading method, and it isn't true. And I know that you may have had experiences with your school and students in school, is that you teach them in the beginning of the year and they forget. This doesn't happen that way. This is something that it's changing two dormant parts of the brain. It's like that on switch, and it turns them on. And when they go on, it never goes back off, unless maybe there was an injury or car accident, and so that could have an impact on the brain, of course. But without anything extreme happening, just normal day-to-day living, our students just go into reading and enjoy reading and become readers and read all the time. So there's no time to forget it, which is a big concern. I was surprised to hear that when I was talking to some teachers about that, and they made that say, "Well, yeah, you can teach them," but then they weren't going to remember something they learned in 2.5 hours. So I needed to know that. So I researched it and worked with the kids, and followed up and made sure that there wasn't this process where people were forgetting. And that was true of autistic people with Asperger's syndrome, that they were not forgetting anything. They were just kept on progressing. And people with an autistic background, a dyslexic background, all those people just, essentially everybody continues to read. I have an experience of where they learn to read and then they stop learning to read. One of the things I'm sorry, go ahead, ask me a question now. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, what was it? Yeah, we came out. There was something that was kind of special. I was going to do this last minute share with you. Let's see, this is how my mind will work. I had to do with will the student forget, and that's a major concern. So when our students learn the reading method, I hear stories about them like 4 or 5 years later, and it's really obvious that their life has transformed and continued to grow based on the bottom of their growth, or the foundation of their growth had to do with their reading, and then it progressed. So for an Asperger syndrome student to go to the prom, to graduate from high school, to get accepted to college and want to go to a theological seminary and become a minister. And when I meet them, they're riding around in a big tricycle with big wheels on their father created for them, and that they're 16, but their affect is more like a 10 or 12-year-old. And now they are matured and graduated from high school, and that they are acting and making decisions in such a way that has a lot of adult in them, besides the fact that they're reading. I mean, that's a big change. And then going from a fourth grade reading level in front of me and knowing I can't read a fourth grade reader. I didn't have a third grader, a second grade reader, so there was nothing less I could have him try. But I did get to watch him read 475 words on 5 sheets of paper that were multi-syllable words that were all from the GED, which means they're post-high school words. And then he took that confidence and just, he's gonna contribute a lot to our world. Bye-bye.